Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk. You are listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Glad to have you in the conversation. Welcome aboard the USS Focal Point, our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life, looking relentlessly for the coordinates where truth intersects with politics. Honored and pleased to welcome to our decision maker line Dean Young. Dean is running in a hotly contested Republican primary. Republican primary is not the general election. This is a Republican primary in Alabama's 1st District to replace Joe Bonner, a Republican who stepped down in order to take a position, I believe, at the University of Alabama. So a hotly contested primary. Dean Young is the Tea Party guy. He's running against Bradley Byrne, who is the GOP establishment guy. We thought you'd find it interesting to talk to Dean Young about his Tea Party race against an establishment GOPer. Dean Young, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian, thank you for having me on.
Yep, you bet. And maybe, Dean, we could start because I know a lot of folks in our listening audience are familiar with Judge Roy Moore and kind of followed his exploits and endeavors back in the day when he was fighting the battle to protect the Ten Commandments. He's back as the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court now, and you've got a little bit of a history with Judge Moore.
I do, Brian. The day that the ACLU came into his courtroom back in 1994, I happened to be there, and I watched them as they took down the prayer that was being said, and Judge Moore and I have been friends before then and ever since, and to this day, he's my best friend on the planet. I fought with him against the ACLU, and we stood against them and for the Ten Commandments. And very thankfully, he won in the year 2000. He was removed from office, and I raised his money for him this last time when he was elected this past year. So I'm very proud to have him as a friend. And in this race, he's come out because Judge Moore realizes that our nation's in trouble, and he has stated openly and publicly that I would be a good person in Washington. And what we're seeing, Brian, is the classic battle that literally the world is watching now. It was in Time magazine last week. The Guardian had it on. I've got a volunteer army. We have hundreds of people who are very upset with the way our country's headed. And my opponent is funded by people like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the Republican establishment. They're funneling money into him by the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we, right now, believe it or not, currently are ahead in the polls. And tomorrow's election day. And, I've made it very clear, just like Judge Moore has, that if we don't get back to the Constitution and the godly principles that made this nation great, then we're going to lose our nation. And that message is resounding with the people in South Alabama.
Now, Dean, talking here with Dean Young, who's a candidate in the primary for the GOP nomination, and the winner of this primary, Dean, I understand, would be a heavy favorite to win the special election, the general election, which I think is going to be when in December.
Yes, sir. It's in December.
So, in other words, this is really the key campaign, key election for that congressional seat.
It is, and that's why the Republican establishment, they're in shock because, again, we've got so little money, but Brian, we've got people that believe from the bottom of their heart that if we don't turn this nation back to the godly principles that it was founded on, that, we're going to lose this nation. And so your listeners that live in the 1st Congressional District, I would ask them to please, get out to vote and say a prayer, because if we win tomorrow, it will be a bellwether signal for the rest of the nation that if the people will stand together, that it's not over, it's not too late. But if you'll stand up and stand together, you can make a difference. And you're going to see something, I believe, tomorrow in South Alabama that's going to give a signal to the rest of the nation.
Well, and Dean, your race kind of is a crystallization point for the real battle right now for the heart and soul of the Republican Party, because we're seeing this dynamic played out in any number of races now where you've got a guy that's really supported enthusiastically by the grassroots, by the Tea Party types that share your concerns for the future of this country, the erosion of moral values, and a guy steps up to be their representative. They get behind him. They love him. And meanwhile, the heavy wallet guys in the Republican Party, the ruling class Republicans, fight that guy. They throw money into the race. And so this becomes kind of a very important showdown. And as you point out, it doesn't just have to do with what's going on in the 1st District in Alabama, but this can have some fairly significant implications for what's happening nationwide in the Republican Party, whether the grassroots are going to be able to send people to Washington that really represent their values.
That's right, Brian. And just this weekend, Mark Levin has come out and endorsed me. Phyllis Schlafly has come out and sent an email out to this district yesterday. And again, Judge Moore is well respected in Alabama. They respect him greatly for his stand that he's taken. He is absolutely telling the people, this is it. If we don't, Brian, and this message is getting out loud and clear to South Alabama, if we don't do something, and this is a perfect example because I've pumped hundreds of thousands of dollars into the race for this seat of my own money, and we've got the soldiers, we've got the people, and it's a contest that this nation will see tomorrow. Where are we going as a nation? Can this nation be bought off by the special interest in the Republican establishment, or can the common people band together and make a difference in our nation? And I mean the common people that believe that this is a Christian nation, that we are a Christian people, and that we need to stand for the Constitution again. I mean, the contest is on, and I need everyone out there listening to pray, pray for us, because they're just shocked that we're ahead in the polls right now. The whole nation is watching.
Well, and over the weekend, Dean, as I followed your race there, the fact that the Chamber of Commerce endorsed your opponent became kind of an issue in the national media. And most people think, well, getting the endorsement of the Chamber of Commerce, they tend to think of the Chamber of Commerce representing kind of business interests, capitalism, conservative values, but the Chamber of Commerce is not what it used to be. It may not be what people think it is.
Well, that's right. And I've made it very clear that the Chamber of Commerce last week sided with Barack Obama in wanting to give amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants in this country. That's who they are. And they're with my opponent, and they've pumped in, they say $185,000, but we'll see at the end of the day exactly how much they pumped in. But we're under complete assault down here. And I mean this with all my heart. Thank God, because we're standing, and we're being inundated with TV commercials. People are getting 5 and 6 mailers per day from my opponent. That's how nervous they are and scared they are that we're going to win. And we need your prayers, and we need your support. And anybody that can help us, if you know people in Mobile County, Baldwin County, Washington County, Monroe County, Escambia County, Alabama, please call them and let them know to support Dean Young, because we need their help. Because if we win, I promise you this, Brian, I will stand on the floor of the House and say that we are a Christian nation. We are a Christian people founded upon a belief in God. And 4 different times in our declaration, they acknowledged God. When they picked a fight with the most powerful nation on the earth, they knew that they had to depend on him. And we've got to get back to that, or we're going to lose our country.
Couple of quick questions, Dean, before I let you go. Talking here with Dean Young, running in a hotly contested race, a Republican primary in the 1st District in Alabama. The special general election will be held in December, but this is really the key election. Dean Young, a Tea Party favorite, a strong conservative Christian, running against an establishment guy, Bradley Byrne. A couple of quick questions to wrap up our conversation here, Dean, and then I want you to give a website address where people can get more information about your campaign. You drew some attention over the weekend by talking about your stance regarding John Boehner as the Speaker of the House and whether you would or would not vote for him. Tell us about that for a second.
Well, that's right. The Washington Post was at a meeting on Saturday, and I was very clear that I would not support John Boehner for Speaker of the House because of the job that he's done or the job that he hasn't done and how they've led this country the wrong direction. And, of course, my opponent will not say where he stands on that issue. And these are just some of the basic differences, Brian, but they're huge differences. And we've got to send someone up there that will stand for what we believe.
One last question, Dean. I talked in the last segment about this Employment Non-Discrimination Act that will be the cloture vote this afternoon on the floor of the U.S. Senate. That's where it starts. It could wind up going over to the House. We hope that John Boehner will kill this thing and not let it get to the floor, but it could. How will you vote on ENDA and why?
I would vote against them putting that into the employment. I don't know exactly what you called it, but I'm against that. Listen, I've taken flack from around the world because of the Huffington Post posting what I said about homosexuals pretending to be married. This nation was founded upon a belief in God, and 5 people at the Supreme Court cannot redefine marriage. Marriage is between one man and one woman, and that's the way it always has been, and that's the way it always will be. You know, we start trying to put things into our employment non-discrimination laws in this country, when we get to the point where we're saying that it's okay, and we can't decide whether we want homosexual activity or homosexuals in the workplace or sexual orientation, we're in trouble. The people of this country need to remember Romans chapter 1 talks about the end of a nation, and we're seeing that as a nation, and we don't need to add that to the employment or the non-discrimination that they put on the employment. So, Brian, if you would, my website is deanyoung.org. deanyoung.org.
Our guest has been Dean Young, Tea Party candidate in the Republican primary, 1st District in Alabama, running against a GOP establishment type, Bradley Byrne. Key race, the entire nation, even across the pond. London Guardian following this race very closely. It's a race of great significance. Well, Dean, thank you for taking time with us. I know you're very busy last day before the campaign, and we do pray for God's blessing on you and your efforts as you stand for the truth. And thank you for chatting with us today.
Brian, thank you.
All right, God bless you, Dean.
Yes, sir.
Dean Young, we'll see how we'll watch that and give you the results on Wednesday. You're listening to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Back with your phone calls after this, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840.